Master your destiny on 99 FM.
Welcome to the MYD studio. Hilda, we are absolutely delighted to have you in studio. Such a strong, such a dynamic woman, such a powerhouse. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insight on the MYD show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. You have been a master of many trades. You've been involved in so much in terms of business, and you have achieved so much. How did you get your driving force? Tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you come from.
I think I get, everything I am, everything I have, everything I can do, I think essentially my gifts, even in terms of my skill set, definitely comes from my father. I'm a daddy's girl. My father was an excellent communicator. My father loved media. My father was an old man back in the day, but brought a newspaper home every day, and we had to read that newspaper every day. So consequently, as a little girl, I started reading quite as a young girl, and I loved books and fell in love with books and media. He had a little black and white, those old film screens, and we would have that as a treat every now and then. And when we think about our childhood, Neville and I, we frequently speak about that little film reel on a Friday evening in a dark corner in the house, and then it runs it kind of runs of the parts that it had, and then you have to lick it together, stick it together. Somehow you did, and you continued watching. So I was introduced to media from a very, very young age. Radio, he loved radio. Radio was on all the time in our home. So I fell in love with media at a really, really young age. So that's the house I grew up in. My mother was a homemaker, an excellent homemaker. I think I've got that skill from her as well. So I love people around me. I really enjoy being at home. I enjoy people in my house because that's the way I grew up. So community, family, other people are very important to me.
Okay. That explains a lot of where your background explains so much of who you are today, and it shows in all of your endeavors and your successes. But I want to ask you what it's been like to be a strong woman, because very often strong women people are afraid of strong women. They don't like a strong woman. It is something we fear. And I know you've even been called the Iron Lady. Do you think this comes out of a fear of your strength? What has it been like?
I just think people have a perception of who you are. I get this frequently. I've had it frequently, just if I think about it lately. I spent a lot of time this year, incidentally. I've spent more time in the rural communities of the country. I spent as much time in Windhoek as well. But I've had the opportunity to spend time in remote villages. And I've just come back from a trip like that, from Rundu, but not even Rundu, another 110 kilometers outside of Rundu. People know me because I've been on television forever and a day. So people have an impression of who I am, apparently, which is that I'm quite strict, and yes, I am strict. I like discipline, I like the notion of knowing who you are, I like being responsible, I like responsible people in my world, but not to the point that people think I'm an iron lady, I'm not cold, I'm not distant, I'm quite warm, and I'm quite ordinary, I'm very down to earth. And so often the comment you get at the end of a trip like that, I've just spent 3 nights in the bush, in this specific area, like I said, outside of Rundu. Often when the guy who's been driving you for the few days that you've been up there drops you at the airport as you take the plane back to Windhoek, he's astounded, and the words are something like, I never knew you were like this. I get SMSs like that with the teams that I spend with, because it's a project that the government is running with the German government, and often the comment is, wow, you're so ordinary. And yes, I've always been very ordinary. I don't like the notion of, I don't understand why people get proud because they achieve stuff. I'm very ordinary. I don't think of myself as being extraordinary. Unlike other people, I always say that everybody is extraordinary. Everybody has a unique gift to the same level another person has. It's the extent to which you apply that gift that makes you different to the next person. So I don't know where this thing comes from, the impression comes from. I just think people like to form their own opinions about who you are, and then until you challenge them and until they come close to you and they experience you, then they really know who you really are. I know though that yes, there is the notion of a strong woman, and there is this notion of an independent woman. And for me, it's kind of like always been a lonely journey. I think strong women must just, leaders generally, whether they're women or men, if you want to be excellent at anything, I think Serena Williams has a lonely life.
It's beautiful things to love.
Yeah.
And so much that feeds a human being. There's so many things that you mentioned right now which are just such nourishment for our souls. how do you express, where do you give of yourself creatively? So you're receiving, you've got these incredible places that feed you, but where do you give out of yourself?
Every conversation, every relationship, every person has value. Every engagement matters. I said this to somebody yesterday. When we leave relationships, we don't burn those bridges because you do not know when God brings them back into your life. I don't want to have to always beg somebody to take me back into their world because I burned that bridge when I had the opportunity to have a good relationship with you. And sometimes we have to leave each other's lives, or we have to leave each other's seasons to go on to a next season. But it does not mean I have to burn that bridge between this season and that season. So that if life brings us back together into each other's worlds, I don't have to feel like I have to crawl to deserve your attention, to deserve that relationship, to deserve your love again. I must just naturally flow into it because I haven't done anything or left stuff in that relationship that would clutter that relationship, that would make that relationship difficult to just pick up where it was.
Yeah.
Because relationships are seasonal at times.
Absolutely, that's very true. We have people that are in our life for a moment and in our life for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
And we don't always get to decide how that plays out. But in terms of relating and of not burning bridges, let's talk for a moment as we are on the path to peace about how do we, when bridges have been burnt, when damage has been done, how do we move to a place of peace? And I'm meaning in the sense of within our relationships, personal relationships, and also as a nation.
Critical to me and key to me would be the notion of humility. I think we struggle because we're not humble. Yeah, we struggle because we have so many walls around us, ourselves, and these walls are apparently there to protect us from other people. And the moment there is a wall, I'm not so sure that you're well protected, because I don't know, we have a lot of high walls in Windhoek around residences. We don't feel very secure in these homes with all of these security systems. Even if I have a very secure car with all of the whistles and the bells and the security systems, I still have to have a level of awareness around myself to make sure that that asset is secured. But I think because we don't like to empty ourselves, and I'm not saying sell yourself out to the point that you have no dignity or an impression of your own, but I just think we think too much of ourselves. And so if we can just become a bit more humble, if we can just humble ourselves, and therefore just say that I am no better than you are, I am no special than you are. But at the same time, with that humility, there's also an understanding that I am enormously valuable. So I don't think humility for me means I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing. That's not what that means. That's humiliation. That's a different word in English. But humility for me is a sense of knowing who you are and knowing that the other person is equally important in terms of their gift set, in terms of their purpose on earth, and say in terms of the breath they breathe, it's the same one given by the same maker unto whom we will return and give an account for our lives of. So your gift is different to mine, but it's not less valuable than mine.
Absolutely.
So can we just start there? Can we just start at the foundation and then undress our prejudices to that level, and then, you know, the other issues such as forgiveness have to then come out of that. And forgiveness is not it's not an event. It doesn't have a date, and therefore it doesn't have an expiry date. That there's forgiveness only on the 21st of March for us as a nation, 1990, and that it has only that day in that relationship where I have burned that bridge. It is continuous. It is throughout life, because I will offend throughout life. I will receive offense throughout life, and I must just stand ready to forgive, because the problem with not forgiving is I have to carry that baggage. And despite me thinking that you don't matter, when I don't forgive you, you have so much space in my life, because I think about you, I think about how to avoid you, I think about how I'm going to mess you up, I think how am I going to ignore you the next time I see you in public, and I see how I'm going to cross the road and walk on the other side of the road, and all of that attention is spent on the person apparently that has no value, that you apparently don't like, has no value in life. No, please, that's just too much effort to spend on life.
Absolutely.
Just empty yourself, forgive, and move on to the next thing that God in life has. that God has for you.
Master your destiny on 99 FM.